The Mac Observers, Mac Geek Gab, episode 857 for Monday, February 15th, 2021. Greetings, folks, and welcome to the Mac Observers, Mac Geek Gab, the show where you send in your questions, your tips, your cool stuff found. We answer your questions. We share your tips. We share your cool stuff found. We share some of our own. The goal is every week when we get together, each of us learns at least 5 new things. That's how it works, or it's supposed to work. And thus far, pretty good. And we love to have you as part of the Mac Geek Gab family here. Thanks for listening. Sponsors for this episode include Twobird.com, TWObird.com, Amazon.com/MGGRX for Amazon Pharmacy, Mac.cashfly.com, Babbel.com, Babbel.com with promo code MGG for 3 months free with your 3-month subscription, and Poo Club.com with promo code MGG. We'll talk more about those later because it's fun. For now, here in Durham, New Hampshire, I'm Dave Hamilton.
And here in Fairfield, Connecticut, this is John F. Braun.
How are you today, Mr. John F. Braun?
Hanging in there.
Hanging. Hey, that's
been doing all sort of tech support for friends and family and
strangers.
Usually make it better. Oh, and strangers, yes. And let's go right to a quick tip that I gave a stranger.
All right.
So I've been going out walking more often than I usually do. And so I was walking on this one trail in one of our open spaces, walked along, past a few people, past one couple with their dog who had a stick in. Half of the dogs that I see when people are out with their dogs have a stick in their mouth. I think it's like a alpha dog, like status symbol or something.
Okay. Fair.
Check out my stick. So I passed, a couple and their dog. I passed, 1 or 2 other people. And then I'm walking down the trail and I see in the middle of the snow-covered trail what appeared to be an iPhone. And It was actually an iPhone 8 XL, right? Big honking phone. So one, how could you not realize that you dropped your phone? I mean, it's so huge.
It wouldn't XL. Why can't I remember? Wouldn't that just be an iPhone 8?
It was a big one. It was a big one.
Okay.
I thought they called it the XL. But anyways, It was the larger iPhone 8 with the, home button and the Touch ID and all of that stuff.
Yeah. 8 Plus, I was like, John. 8 Plus.
8 Plus. Okay, yes. That's it.
Yep. Thanks everybody in the chat room at at live.macgeekgab.com for catching us on that one.
Right. So I'm like, how can I find out who owns this phone? So I tried to unlock it, but, I tried a couple of dumb passcodes. That didn't work. I tried Touch ID. Obviously, that didn't work, nor would I expect it to. So now I'm like, I remember this one trick here. So, there's the S lady on the phone. And on this phone, if you hold down the home button, eventually S lady will come up. And so I did that. And I said, S lady, who's the owner of this phone? Or did I say, who does this phone I think I said, who does this phone belong to? And it said, that's a good question. And then I rephrased it and it came up with, it appears this phone belongs to Mama. And I'm like, nah.
Okay.
And I'm like,
narrows it down, but not enough. That's right.
Yeah. And then I came across the couple and they were like, did you find a phone? And I'm like, yes. I'm like, can you unlock it? Just so I was almost sure it was there.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
She tried Touch ID and it probably didn't work because it was, dry and all that out. But she typed in her passcode and it opened it. And I'm like, okay, here you go. I'm like, here's a tip for you. Because I tried the same thing with my phone, Dave.
Yeah.
One thing on the iPhone 12, which I had to figure out for myself, is that to activate who, there is, of course, no home button. On the iPhone 12 and probably prior Face ID-based phones, holding down the power button will bring it up. So I did it with mine.
The side button. I see what you're saying. Yeah. The wake up button. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So I held it down and then I asked my phone and it came up and said, it appears this phone belongs to John. Like, okay, that's good.
Yep.
And maybe you have to do it more than once, but then I did it again. And on the top of the screen was my contact card.
Ah.
And when I clicked on that, it actually showed my contact card. So one, you could consider that kind of a security thing. Though I think you can disable that somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's right.
But the thing is, when I clicked on the contact card, it showed my entire contact card, my phone numbers, my address, all that sort of thing. So my tip turned out to not really be that quick, but set up your personal contact card properly on your phone.
Yeah. Yeah, and tag it
in contacts. If you sync it to iCloud, and that way people can return your phone to you if you lose it.
Yeah, yeah. If you go to settings, contacts, there is my info is listed there, and that's where you can choose the contact card that will be yours, and presumably that's the one that comes up when somebody asks the questions that you asked. So maybe she just has herself called Mama in the phone.
Okay. That could be it. Yeah, because there's like 3 different places where you can set your name.
Yeah.
And that's one of them. So thank you for that follow-up.
Yeah. And then there's setting your medical ID too. Folks in the chat room are suggesting to do that too. And you do that under settings, health, medical ID. And you can set all kinds of things, including emergency contact and show when locked. So there's another point of contact thing. And that would even have your emergency contact information, which might be more helpful to someone like you, John, that found a detached phone, because if you called Mama, it would call that phone. Whereas if you called Mama's emergency contact, it might find someone that could contact Mama and get the phone back to her. So, yeah. Yeah, that's good. I like it. Cool. All right. Yeah, fun. Great. Let's go on to some quick tips from all of you. Dmitry writes in and says, I have a way of doing a quick screen recording that results in a very compact video file. Launch a Zoom session, start recording to computer, because you can record to computer or to cloud with Zoom, and share a full screen or a specific window that you'd like recorded. And then when you stop the session, Zoom automatically converts the recording to a very compact format. You don't have to go and run Handbrake separately to scale it down or anything like that. And then, of course, you can use QuickTime Player on the resulting file to trim the edges and get your movie down. That's brilliant, especially since most of us have Zoom on our computers now. And it does. It does a great job with both screen sharing and recording things. I've been using Zoom for my UNH class, John, in addition to like our Mac Observer meetings and all that stuff. And it's great. So yeah, it's good. It's good. Thanks, Dmitry. Great tip. I love when we have these tools at our disposal. And you just host a Zoom meeting that you don't tell anyone to join. And now it's your own personal screen recording. So, pretty good. Any thoughts on that, John, before we move on?
I guess you could always use QuickTime Recorder for the QuickTime Player. I think you could do that as well, right?
For screen capture? I guess so. I guess that's true. Yeah. I guess that's right. Yeah. So, all right. Well, there you go. Lots of things. David sends in a quick tip, which we will navigate very carefully around, that I'm going to title Avoiding the Duck. Because sometimes on your phone, you type a word that might begin with a different letter of the alphabet, like maybe the 6th letter of the alphabet, and your phone wants to correct it to duck or ducking. Well, David doesn't quite like that, because then it makes him want to type that word again and again. And so his hack is to create a contact that has ducking, but with the different letter as the first name, and duck with the different letter as the last name, and save it, because person's names, contacts names will train your spell checker. They are hinted by your spell checker. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to take, and this is for any word, it doesn't have to be the one that converts to duck. I put them in the keyboard section of the phone, John. So go to settings, keyboard. I believe it's under settings, keyboard, right? Or is it settings, general keyboard? My apologies. Settings, general keyboard, and go to text replacement. Here is where you would type things like, for me, because my I want to have my Dave at Mac Observer email address in there, right? So I have DTMO, because that way I know. I just type that, I tap those 4 characters, and it puts my email address out without anything. So I would put, for that, for example, I would have the shortcut as DTMO and the phrase as, Dave at macobserver.com. When you want to teach it a word that would not normally be in the dictionary, you put the same thing in for the shortcut as well as the phrase. And then that way, every time you type that shortcut, it knows this is something you meant to type. And at worst, it converts it to the phrase, which is the same thing. So that's how you can avoid the duck. And that's how we can keep this podcast from requiring an explicit tag. That's how it's done, folks. Thank you, David. Good stuff. It really is a good tip for lots of things. And yes, as Brian8944 in our live.macgeekgab.com chat room points out, that keyboard text replacement syncs with text replacement on your Mac as well. So you get to avoid it in both places. 2 for the price of 1. I like it. Last episode, John, we were talking about a way to get anniversaries into the calendar, right? And listener Scott wrote in, he says, when I heard about using a second contact card to put anniversaries in, my immediate thought is, why not just put it in the anniversary date field? That's what I do, and it works great, and I never have to create an additional contact card. Then I wondered why you didn't mention this as an option, so I looked a little deeper. I use BusyCal and BusyContacts, Scott says, and have been using the anniversary date field for years. I guess at some point I added a custom date field in my contacts database and gave it the label of anniversary, and now it is easy to add that field to my contact card. This will show up as an all-day event, just like a birthday in BusyCal. However, on Apple Calendar, it will not have the number of the anniversary. And he sent us a little BusyCal help link, which is great. Yeah, you can add that custom date to your, and label it anniversary, and it will work. That's true. Very true. I like it. It's a good little hack. So this is what we love about the quick tips, John. This is what we love about them. Yeah, good. Any thoughts on that before we keep on rolling here? We roll with the changes.
Yeah, for anniversaries, I just do a recurring yearly event. So that's
do that too,
right?
That's actually what I've always done. The problem is if I want to look up someone's anniversary, I have to search my calendar as opposed to just looking in their contact record. So as we've been going through this over the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking maybe I need to change my thing so that I, have that stuff there. So, yeah. But yes, that's how I've always done it, is the recurring event. That's exactly it. Yep. That's exactly it. Or you just rely on Barry to tell you when your wedding anniversary is coming up. And that's really handy. So thanks for that, Barry, every year. All right. Graham shares something with us. He says, I've got an M1 Mac, and lots of people, of course, have been asking questions and wondering what the future is with M1 Macs. And he says, I thought it might be worth emphasizing this bullet point I was reading about parallels and the current limitation for version 16 on the M1 technical preview. He says, it is the bullet reads, it is not possible to install or start an Intel x86 based operating system in a virtual machine on the Intel Mac. And that is true. Parallels has communicated, though, that in the not terribly distant future, they plan to leverage Apple's Rosetta 2 technology to put a wrapper around the virtual machine and then run that in as an Intel thing. So my guess is they have that working at some level. And then when it gets a little more stable, they'll roll it out for, all of us. But that is truly a guess. That's just me looking at software development and knowing how responsible Parallels is in their communication. I don't think they would say something that's vaporware. Could happen, but I don't think so. So estimated guess, educated guess, educated estimation. There you go. I don't know, man. I don't know. Any thoughts on that, John?
No.
Okay.
I actually have to renew my my Parallels told me that it's expired, so
It's
I
time.
gotta do something about that.
Yeah. Shoot them an email. They might renew it for you, John.
They have before.
Yeah. Cool. So John, I was in the last episode, I mentioned that I had unintentionally put the beta of macOS 11.3 on my laptop, on my M1 Air, and I needed to deal with that because it wasn't Safari and it wasn't working. Presumably, I think it's because Safari is using Apple's malware database as opposed to Google's now, or whatever, site protection, whatever it is. Anyway, Safari was bad news for me. I needed it for my class. You mentioned an excellent recovery method. And had I thought about this, or had you told me about this, had I known about this on the day that this happened, I would have used it. And of course, yours was to launch Time Machine in recovery mode and recover to a snapshot of the drive. Unfortunately, by the time I did this on Sunday afternoon, after having upgraded on like Tuesday, that snapshot was gone, unfortunately. So I wasn't able to do that, but that would have been the answer, or the easy answer. The easy answer that I took was that I remembered I had a macOS 11 volume separate from my main boot volume. That was from when I got the machine, and I didn't want to wipe it clean because there were problems with that in the beginning, and I didn't want to brick my M1 Air, so I just created a new volume and migration assistanted to that. So I went back and basically fleshed out this initial volume that had, so I basically did a clean install on a second volume. And I was running off of that, and I made it through the week okay. And then Warren, a Mac Geek Gab listener, texted me and said, hey, I was just able to download from the App Store, the, release 11.2 full installer, and install that over top of my 11.3 beta, and I'm good to go. I thought, well, let me try it, because I still have this 11.3 beta volume that I just hadn't touched in a few days. So I did that. I booted into that. I downloaded the installer from the App Store, John, like any of us can, not a developer version or anything. And I ran it, and it worked. So I was using, and this flabbergasted me until I stopped to think about it, because I was using old logic, John. I was thinking about in the old days when we truly had just one volume and everything was fully integrated. And so once you kind of upgraded, there was no going back. However, nowadays, the system volume is separate from the data volume. And it seems as though, at least from 11.3 beta to 11.2, one can just replace the system volume and all is good. So I think that, that was the answer. So there you go. Yeah. I was amazed, John, truly, and happily so. So now I'm back on my other volume, and it's working fine on 11.2. Everything's fine. So pretty good, huh?
Nice.
I think so. All right. We promised some Wi-Fi stuff to go through. We promised some, and then we have some questions and maybe even some geek challenges today. So I'm eager to get to that. I'm also eager to tell you about our first two sponsors, if that works for you, Mr. Braun.
Ducky.
All right. Look, your inbox is a to-do list, and our sponsor, Twobird, makes it the only to-do list that you need. Think about this, right? One place to track all of your tasks, not 5, so you can clear out all the clutter and focus on what matters, because your inbox can be overwhelming. Well, Twobird helps you focus and respond effortlessly. It sorts things out so that you have low priority things and reminders set aside so you get smarter notifications, preventing unnecessary distractions. You can unsubscribe from all those things that you're subscribed to, but having all your tasks in one place is what you're after. And Twobird was built with the same philosophy as, and by the same company as, Notability, right? So these are people that understand efficiency. We're efficiency nuts here too. You got to check out Twobird. We've been looking at this. This is awesome. Truly, one inbox for all your tasks. Check it out. Go to twobird.com. Free. You can download this immediately for your Mac, for your iPhone. Of course, it's available in the Google Play Store, and Microsoft's is coming soon. Check it out. Twobird.com, TWOBIRD.com. Our thanks to Twobird for sponsoring this episode. All right, next up is Babbel, or should I say, notre sponsor est Babbel, because with Babbel, you get to learn a language, and I learned this from Babbel as I've been going through and learning French. And in case you don't speak French, you can learn it in Babbel. But that's not the only language that you can learn in Babbel. Babbel's got, of course, French, as I said, German, Italian, Portuguese, Swedish, Turkish, Dutch, Polish, Indonesian, Norwegian, Danish, Russian, Spanish. You got to check this out because they make this super easy. Babbel's 15-minute lessons make it the perfect way to learn a new language on the go. You can do it on your iPhone. You can do it at your computer. I actually kind of like sitting here at the computer, but I got like a microphone and all that stuff. But your phone has a microphone, so you can do it where it works for you. And unlike those language classes that we all took in high school, Babbel designs their courses with practical, real-world conversations in mind, things that you'll get to use in everyday life. Other language learning apps use AI for their lesson plans, but Babbel lessons were created by over 100 different language experts. Their teaching method has been scientifically proven to be effective. Right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. So that's 6 months for the price of 3. We like that. Just go to Babbel.com and use promo code MGG. That's BABBEL.com, code MGG for an extra 3 months for free. Babbel, language for life. Our thanks to Babbel for sponsoring this episode. All right, John. Are we ready here for some Wi-Fi stuff? Yeah?
See.
Okay. Excelente. All right.
And that's one language that I speak as well is C. That's my favorite language.
Ah, there you go. Nicely played, my friend. Yeah, there you go. Cool. All right. Let's go to Paul here. Yeah. And Paul says, speaking of Zoom and Netflix, he says, in our ranch house, I have trouble in Netflix and Zoom either timing out or not operating. I use Verizon Fios and bought their router and extender. If I switch to another router and Eero 6, do you think my problems will be solved? So this is a good question. We get a lot of these, and it's some version of things aren't working the way that I want them to. But these dropouts are certainly a thing, and far more noticeable with all the streaming and Zooming that we're all doing. So the way to approach this, and we always approach these questions is, with the what would I do next if I were there? We need to figure out whether these problems are truly with your Wi-Fi internal to your house or something external. So the first thing I would try is plugging in via Ethernet. Does Netflix operate okay there? And I realize this is sometimes easier said than done, but that truly is the best way to test this because that will isolate your Wi-Fi out of the system, and then you get to dig in and see what's going on. The other way to test it is what should be. Go ahead, John. You take it.
Well, the other thing. What I've done in the past as well is the Netflix app, at least most of the ones that I've used, buried in, I think, setup or something, there is a network diagnostics, which can check your bandwidth and I think maybe signal strength and all that. So that's another tool that, you don't know it's there unless, it's there, which now you do.
Now you do. Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Smart. No, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that I like that because it actually tests your connection to Netflix, not just your connection in general. So I like that. as far as testing your connection in general, what should be patented 3-ping setup is a great way to really isolate this stuff. So let me explain. I know I've explained it before, but it'll be very quick. Open up Terminal, and you're going to open 3 windows. They're all going to look very similar. In one window, you're going to type ping www.apple.com. Okay. Hit enter. And when you type ping in the terminal, it just once per second, it sends a packet out to wherever you told it to send it. So in this case, www.apple.com. And then it waits for that packet to come back. If that packet comes back, it tells you in milliseconds how long it took. If it doesn't come back, it tells you the packet was missed. Okay. So get the Apple one going. This is sort of the big, large scale test, right? It tests from your specific computer all the way out the internet, across the waves to Apple and then back. But we can get a little more specific. So in a second terminal window, type ping 192. This is assuming you're on a cable modem. So for you on your Verizon, you'd probably skip this one unless you know. Well, no, you'd skip this one. So for cable modem people, you type ping 192 with a space in between ping and 1. So ping space 192.168.100.1. That is the address of your cable modem. So now you're looking at your network. You've got a ping going all the way out to Apple, and then you've got a ping going to your cable modem. So we've moved one step in. And the nice part about that is if you see the pings to your cable modem are fine, but the pings to Apple are not, well, then you know there's a problem between your cable modem and Apple. And generally speaking, that's not your fault and it's your problem, but you can call your ISP and tell them this. We can go one layer deeper, okay? We would ping whatever your router is. So for a lot of people, that's going to be 192.168.1.1, but that's certainly not universal. So you need to know your router's IP address. That would be the address of the web interface if you're using a non-cloud attached router. If it is a cloud attached router, you can either way. In fact, you can go into system preferences on your Mac, go to network, go to Wi-Fi or Ethernet if you like, and look at the router address that's in there. So that's going to be the one that you're going to type in there. And now you've got 3 layers, right? So you know your connection to your router, you know your connection to your cable modem, and you know your connection to Apple. So if all of them are bad, then you know that your problem is between you and your router. If you and your router is fine, but your router and your cable modem is bad, that's pretty rare, but it happens. And it could be a bad cable between the two. But this helps you isolate things down. So that's my, there you go. That's my description of my patented 3-ping method. So there you go. Except it's not patented, so you feel free to use it. It's all good. Any more thoughts on that one, John?
No, that's good. I like the strategy of segmenting your network, to look down all paths to see which one. Yeah, which one? Has something in the way.
Yeah, you'll see it. And the great part is if you put those ping windows next to each other, they will be marching in unison. And if one of them stops marching for a few blips, you'll see it as it's kind of moving up the screen. It's really easy to see. Sometimes you need to leave these open for hours. It's fine. And then when you have a problem, go look and see where it is across the board. If it's across the board, then you've got an internal problem. If it's just outside, well, you've got an external problem. So yeah, good. All right. David adds to this. And David asks, he says, this was a very long thing. Essentially, he's describing Wi-Fi congestion. Okay. And he's got all kinds of issues where his Wi-Fi devices will not reliably talk with one another at any speed. And when he resets things, sometimes it gets better for a short period of time, and then it does not. I'll share the punchline here because it was really interesting. His problem, John, I want to share some general things too, but his problem turned out to be his printer. So our printers can be Wi-Fi capable these days. And that, goes back 10 years. It's not a brand new thing. You can connect your printer to Wi-Fi, or your printer can be its own access point, and you can just connect directly to your printer, so you don't need a Wi-Fi network, and print without having any other network in place. And your printer will essentially advertise itself like your router or your other, mesh access points would, with its own name and sometimes even its own password. David's printer was doing both. He had connected it to his network. In years past, to me, that was always the thing that turned off the printer's self-advertised Wi-Fi network. Because once it was on a network, it figured, great, you know how to get to me. I'm going to stop getting in the way of everything else. Well, this one did not. And that was causing all of his problems. And he found this out by launching something like Wi-Fi Explorer or iStumbler and seeing all the networks near him. And that's one way to go about this. If you find with the 3-ping test that you've got multiple networks, or that you've got Wi-Fi congestion or internal network congestion, open up something like iStumbler or Wi-Fi Explorer. Wi-Fi Explorer lays it out. I find the layout of Wi-Fi Explorer to be a little easier to grok all at once, but they both tell you the same information. You can easily glean the information. And what you're looking for are how many networks are within sight of all of my devices, because anything that's within sight of them could be causing interference. And then you look at, are they all in the same channel number? And you start digging down that path. And he found that he had one really strong network that was nearby, and it was the one coming from his printer. So he went into his printer settings, he turned off the self-advertised network, and all of his Wi-Fi problems went away. Oftentimes it's your neighbor, and you can't go to your neighbor's house and turn off their Wi-Fi, or you can, but they get upset with you. And if you do that, make sure you don't get caught. That's all. Even better would be to change your neighbor's Wi-Fi channel so that they still have Wi-Fi, but aren't getting in the way of yours, and yours isn't getting in the way of theirs. Like that, there is mutual benefit here. So if you can hack your neighbor's Wi-Fi to fix it for all of you, maybe that's okay. I don't know. It's not officially okay, but all's well that ends well. That's how I look at it. Yeah, thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, I had kind of related, but I'll mention it. So yeah, I was recently at my parents, so they got an iMac and an iPad. The bad news is the iMac is dying, but it's like 8 years old, and I'll let you know what happens with that. So I bought them a new refurb, which there's lots of them out there.
Sure.
And they'll be really happy with it. And I recovered the data from the internal hard drive, which I'm convinced was the part that was dying. But anyways, the other problem, and it's now on an external SSD. So, and they have a time machine backup. So multiple backups. So they won't lose everything. But also my dad has an iPad, a Wi-Fi only iPad. And he was like, yeah, I can't connect to anything. And I'm like, So I look, and yeah, whatever website he was going to said no internet connection. I'm like, okay. Went into general, went to Wi-Fi. And the iPad, for whatever reason, was connected to HP _ and I'm like, that's why, because you're not connected to the internet. I don't know why it decided to connect to the printer. I think it was their printer, but I don't know why it didn't connect to why it disconnected from their Wi-Fi, unless it maybe went out and...
Yeah. Or the printer was higher in the list. Like if at one point he needed to print and didn't know how the network was set up and was just like, well, I'll connect to the printer and print. And he probably did. And then that left the printer higher in the list, right? Like all of these things. People say they haven't changed anything, but we all change stuff. Yeah. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. On David's, related to David's, but really just much bigger picture. My cousin lives in New York City and was having all kinds of problems with his Wi-Fi, getting from room to room. It just like no bueno. And he's in a Wi-Fi congested building that includes a lot of techies. In fact, I think the guy that created Google Maps lives there or something. So like lots of tech people, but it doesn't matter whether you're a techie or not these days. You have Wi-Fi, right? That's how it works. And he had this mesh system, MESH force, just like you would think. You can buy this on Amazon, and I will categorize this as cheap and worth it, at least for him, because he had started with 3 mesh points from them. It wasn't covering it enough. He had gotten up to 6 mesh points from them in like an 1,800, let's say 2,500 square foot apartment. Even if it was a 3,000 square foot apartment, whatever it is, like that's way overkill in most scenarios. And so I was and he said his problem was that his devices were mostly not connecting to the 5 gigahertz network. They would only connect to the 2.4. I'm like, well, it's not really up to your network. That's up to the device because that's how that works. But still, this seemed weird. And I kept telling him, I'm like, you're not in some farmhouse where your closest neighbor is, 10 acres away or something. You've got a lot of people around. Just because somebody bought some chips from Qualcomm and put them and, attached some antennas to them and called it a mesh system doesn't mean that it's the same as a mesh system from a vendor that actually is paying attention to this stuff. And I reached out to the MeshForce people and asked them how they were doing things. And of course, every answer was, well, we don't do that. We don't do that. We don't do that. It was, do you do any buffer bloat protection? No. Are you doing any sort of QoS? No. Are you doing this? No. And it was obvious that it was like, okay, this is built to be and sold as an inexpensive mesh system. So my comment, cheap and worth it. Probably would be great in that farmhouse that I described. Not so good in my cousin's apartment. I finally convinced him to buy an Eero system. He's like, I don't need Wi-Fi 6. I'm like, dude, you should just buy the Wi-Fi 6 and forget about it. But he didn't want to do that. So he bought the second gen Eero. So, the just prior to the Wi-Fi 6 coming out generation Eero, which is great because, works really well and less expensive because saving money is important to him, even though it seems like he's just going to buy lots of stuff. And that's my judgment on my cousin. I'll own that. I've told him this. But with 3, and he's like, how many should I get? I'm like, get 3. And he bought 3 Eeros. He put his MeshForce system away, and it has been 100% smooth sailing since day one. No, this is not some embedded Eero spot, although it certainly could work as one. We're not getting paid for this one. This is just, you get what you pay for. I was actually encouraging him to use Plume, not Eero here. And I still think that in his scenario where it's really congested, Plume's cloud smarts are better than what Eero does, to be perfectly honest. But he didn't like the idea of subscription-based routers where you have to pay every year for, access to all the features of your router. And so he decided he wanted to go with the Eero, and that's why he went with that. But that the Eero is working great for him. I'm sure the Plume also would have worked great for him. And so there you go. That's just, be careful what you're buying, I guess is the so beware the cheap mesh because you get what you pay for. But again, if you don't have any interference nearby, might be totally fine. So anyway, thoughts on that before we keep moving on with some Wi-Fi stuff here, John?
Despite being in an area where I see probably 30 to 40 access points, I seem to be isolated enough where, interference from neighbors has, last I checked, not be a concern for me.
That's good. Well, you're also using a high quality mesh system that's built to sort its way around this.
In the past, actually, I would, when I had like an Archer unit, just the single one, I would manually, I would do a scan like you suggested is a good thing to do and see who was on what channel. And, in the old days, it was like, 1, 6, or 11 are the approved, and, to see which one is the most popular in your area and go to a different one.
Right. Go somewhere else. Yeah. I have found, like with my daughter's apartment downtown, that was my most recent, like personal hands-on experience with congested Wi-Fi scenario. And what I found there was that it was less about the signal strength of the other routers, because I was picking one where it was like the relative signal strength. I was picking a channel where the relative signal strength was low, but the density was high. And in an apartment building, that was proven to me to be the wrong approach, The right approach was picking a channel that had the least amount of other radios on it, regardless of signal strength. And that brought they have a 300 down and whatever, 25 up or something connection. And that their downstream speeds, 12 feet away from the router or even 5 feet away from the router were somewhere in the neighborhood of, 80 to 100. And when I moved to the channel that had less radios, but higher frequency, higher signal strength on those competing radios, it went immediately up to 300. And was like, aha. Okay. Right. So there's some math there. It's worth, again, it's troubleshooting, right? It's worth experimenting. So yeah. Yep. All right. Let's see. How are we doing on time here? We're doing all right. Okay. Andy brings us a question here. Andy says, my router's getting flaky, so it's time for a new one. It seems silly to do mesh in a 1,200 square feet townhouse. Is Synology still your top choice? And then he asked, have you played with the Ubiquiti Dream Machine? So it is interesting that, a router that's 4+ years old now, the Synology RT2600AC, is still the top of the line non-Wi-Fi 6 router that's out. It really is fantastic. It's got, 2 4x4 radios. It's got a super fast CPU to run all the things that you want to run. And it's great. Synology's mesh has been flaky for me, and a lot of you have reported seeing the same thing. So I don't use Synology's mesh, but as far as a router, that RT2600 AC is fantastic. And it's amazing to me that, it's like I've literally been running the same one for 4 years and have no desire to upgrade. It's just the best router that I can find. However, interestingly enough, that Andy asked about the Ubiquiti Dream Machine, that is number 2 on my list. And in fact, if it weren't for the Synology router, that is definitely what I would be using. The Ubiquiti Dream Machine takes all of those Unify smarts, faster CPUs than you would get on the sort of entry-level Unify stuff, great radios, and packs them into this router that is a fully capable unified device, meaning you can add all of Unify's various different access points. Like, you want an outdoor access point? Go ahead. There you go. Right there. All of that stuff ties in. It manages it all. I prefer Synology's interface to Ubiquiti's interface. They're both web managed. They both have iOS apps. But it's probably only because I'm so used to Synology's web interfaces, both from having the router for 4 years and also the disk station. There's nothing wrong with Ubiquiti's. They both can get very complex if you want them to, and that's sort of the point of these. So yeah, I would say you're going to be fine with either one of those. I like the VPN features of the Synology better than the Ubiquiti. They both have inbound VPN, but the Synology is way more full featured and way more customizable than I think you get one type of VPN with Ubiquiti. So to me, that's actually the deal breaker or the deal decider. It's not really a breaker. It's a decider. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on the two. They're non-Wi-Fi 6 routers. So I'm hoping both brands come out with Wi-Fi 6 versions of those things soon. But yeah. Any thoughts on that, John?
You know more than I do.
I've tested more of those than you have. That's for sure. Yeah. I know I'm a little crazy. It's just how I work. All right. Jason asks about interference, specifically with Thunderbolt and USB when it comes to Wi-Fi. He says, I know you both spend a lot of time digging into this stuff. In the past, one advantage of using Thunderbolt 2 with its docks and drives was that it did not interfere with Wi-Fi connectivity. Until recently, I assumed the same rule applied, that while Thunderbolt 3 shares the same connector as USB-C, it still runs on a different frequency and therefore will not interfere with Wi-Fi. However, I'm hearing I might not be correct. You are correct that your assumption was incorrect. And by that, I will say USB and anything that runs at those speeds across it, including Thunderbolt, can interfere with Wi-Fi. Apple's got a knowledge base article about this, and we will put a link in the show notes, of course. But the general advice here is that you should use a high quality shielded Thunderbolt or USB cable, and you should keep your devices as far from your Wi-Fi signal source as possible. So yes, Thunderbolt can interfere, Thunderbolt 3 and what we call Thunderbolt 4, because they're running across USB-C, can interfere with Wi-Fi the same as USB can and will. So yeah, good question. Not the greatest news, but it's just, it's physics, right, John? That's what it comes down to.
Pretty much. And I'm going to link to an oldie but a goodie here, which is a white paper from Intel.
Okay.
The title being USB 3.0 Radio Frequency Interference Impact on 2.4 gigahertz wireless devices.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's physics. And, it still is beyond me. The problem here is that you're dealing with what I think I'll call resonant frequencies, or I'm not a RF engineer, really.
I think that's the right
The thing
term.
is, the thing is, all right. So, for example, USB 3 operates at 5 gigabits per second. Some things operate at 5 gigahertz. Do you think they'd interfere with each other? Yeah. So why did you make that choice to have them both do the same amount of things, per second?
That's what it is. Hertz. Okay. I didn't quite realize.
I think in some cases, or at least that's how they explain it.
I thought it was the 2.
Is it 2.4?
I thought 2.4 was
close enough, right?
I thought 2.4 was the one that would be interfered with. I thought it was 2.4 was the issue, not 5.
I'm saying that because USB 3 operates at 5 gigabits per second, I think that's
okay, but I don't think it's the 5 gigahertz band that gets in the way. I think 5 gigahertz is the solution here. So connecting your devices to 5 gigahertz doesn't get them in the way, but Bluetooth and 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi are interfered with by USB speeds. That's what I thought. But if I'm wrong about that, say the word. But I'm pretty sure that's right. That USB 3, whatever frequency it operates at, resonates with in the same range as 2.4. So yeah, like Apple's devices, if your router supports, wait. I don't know. Actually, Apple's article isn't entirely clear. So you may be right about it. I thought it was 2.4, but maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I'll check the article.
Okay.
Listed there.
All right. Cool.
Good refresher.
Yeah, for sure. No, but using shielded cables evidently makes a big difference, which is why some of us experience more of this than others. And I thought that was a good, right? I mean,
and I'm going to add something else. Having done some radio stuff, having a good ground is important as well.
Makes sense. Yep.
Things that aren't grounded well, can generate, I guess, spurious, troublesome RF. So
for sure,
check your ground while you're at it. You can buy a little thing at most Home Depot and stuff like that check the polarity of your outlets. So make sure what you're plugged into is set up right, because it may not be.
It might not.
Mine are, but yours may not be.
Right. We
actually had someone. No, we had someone report a badly grounded power strip, I think, or outlet to. It was interfering with like a nearby something. Yeah. Anyways, so it can happen.
I think that's right. Yeah. We have more Wi-Fi to talk about here, John. We also have more sponsors. So I want to talk about more sponsors, and then I want to talk about more Wi-Fi, if that works for you.
Hit me.
All right. Our first sponsor here is Amazon Pharmacy, where an Amazon Prime member can save on prescription medication when not using insurance and get free 2-day delivery. You've used Amazon Prime, right? I certainly have. And it's awesome. Like the delivery, it just shows up. It's amazing how quickly they're able to get things to me. Well, they can get your prescriptions to you the same way. It's awesome. It saves you time because Amazon Pharmacy delivers your medication directly to your door. So there's no more waiting in line at the pharmacy. Not being forced to go to the pharmacy, that's a really good thing right now. And it's super easy. You can have your doctor's office send your next prescription straight to Amazon Pharmacy. You can use your insurance. Amazon Pharmacy works with most insurance plans nationwide. And as I said, you get free 2-day delivery and save on prescription medication when you're an Amazon Prime member when paying without insurance. Very cool stuff. You can learn more at amazon.com/MGGRX. That's amazon.com/MGGRX. One more time with feeling. Amazon.com/MGGRX. Our thanks to Amazon Pharmacy for sponsoring this episode. Next up, Kitty Poo Club. I know the name, funny. The service, the product, awesome. If you're a cat person, you know how much your cat likes cardboard boxes, right? Like it's a thing. Any cardboard box shows up, the cat wants to be in it. Well, this is a litter box that shows up, and it's a cardboard box. The way it works, it's an all-in-one solution designed to be convenient. So every month, Kitty Poo Club delivers an affordable, high-quality, recyclable litter box that's pre-filled with the litter of your choice. These boxes are totally leak-proof, eco-friendly, and have a fun design for every season. And then when the month is up, you just recycle the box, and Kitty Poo Club will automatically deliver a new one to you. So you don't have to change used litter, and you don't have to clean the box that way. It's awesome. We've been using the organic soy litter here. Our cats love this stuff. You got to check this out because Kitty Poo Club has a no-risk guarantee, so you can easily customize or cancel anytime. So give yourself the gift that keeps on giving the whole year, a Kitty Poo Club subscription. Right now, Kitty Poo Club is offering 20% off your first order when you set up auto ship by going to kittypooclub.com and entering promo code MGG. Again, kittypooclub.com. Enter promo code MGG to get 20% off when you set up auto ship. One more time, that's kittypooclub.com. And don't forget about our promo code MGG at checkout. Our thanks to Kitty Poo Club for sponsoring this episode. All right, let's go to more Wi-Fi here. Brian writes, he says, we recently moved from Danbury, Connecticut to Southbury, Connecticut. On every device in our house, laptops, iOS devices, Chromebooks, etc., they all show our previous address in Danbury as our current location. I have updated the home address, but both Apple Maps and Google Maps show us in Danbury. I've also deleted the apps on our iOS devices and have had limited success, but not 100%. The location tends to drift back over time. I'm not sure if my Eeros are the cause, but I did find a thread online about updating the Skyhook location, and I did that today. So this email, we've been saving this Wi-Fi stuff for a little while. This email is almost 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks old by now. But I think you nailed it, Brian. Skyhook is where I would go with that, and I'll put a link in the show notes. Skyhook tracks the IP, the GPS location of the MAC address of Wi-Fi access points. And they populate this database in a lot of different ways, including you just manually going and putting it in. But they also, different apps can take, what they see when they also have location and send that off to Skyhook and those sorts of things. But that's a lot of where these location-based things come from, especially when you're using Wi-Fi triangulation. So updating when you move and you move a router with you, updating that Skyhook location can fast track this. It will eventually get there, I would think, but this will make it happen a lot faster. I've seen when I've updated Skyhook, John, it's usually about 2 weeks before I start to see it trickle through to whatever, whoever's using it. I don't know, but yeah, my guess is that's the issue.
Yeah, I think, like the other guys that have cars that, map and all that, I think they do exactly what you said, is every now and then they cruise around and just read all the MAC addresses in an area and then associate the data, because that is a way, but as we can see, not a very reliable way to determine someone's location.
Yeah. I mean, it's relatively reliable.
I have one that I can't figure out, and I've seen it happen to others. So, my cell phone number is mapped to Norwalk, but I'm, of course, in Fairfield,
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
If you didn't hear me the first 840.
It's true.
But anyways, Pokemon Go insists that, like when I access certain things, it still says, oh yeah, this location that you've been to is in Norwalk. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I see it happen to some other people too. So I think they're doing some level of phone number mapping when they shouldn't be.
Right. They've got access to your location.
Obviously they have access to my location. So why are they associating Norwalk to what I'm doing instead of Fairfield, where I am?
Yeah, that's
Norwalk is close by, but as far as I know, we do not directly touch Norwalk.
No, you have Westport between you and Southport or something too, I think. But
Southport's kind of Fairfield, but
that's true.
You're right.
That's right. Yeah. But no, you're right. Like exchanges are still mapped to towns. Like that exchange, which I won't read out here live, is very much a Norwalk exchange. It's mapped to Norwalk's, routing in the phone system, and that's how it shall be. You just happen to get that number. Ironically, your phone number and my mother's phone number are exactly the same, except the last 4 digits of yours starts with, let's say, X, and then ends with a double Y. My mother's phone number starts with a Y and ends with a double X. But other than that, they are literally exactly the same number. And so that's it. Until I could associate you in my phone with a contact record, I would see the number come in. It was like, is it John or is it my mother? I have no idea. It's just fascinating, the way things happen. So my mother does live in Norwalk, so right on the Westport border, but it doesn't really matter. All right. Wi-Fi. John, not you. Listener John says, we have the Synology RT2600AC as our main router and 2 of their mesh MR2200AC connected. We want to get a Wi-Fi 6 system, and it sounds as though while you like the Synology router, you don't recommend it as a mesh system. Correct. I've certainly noticed it to be very slow moving devices to the mesh point with the best signal. That's one of the problems, sir. Yeah. He says, I'm willing to consider Eero because it's managed remotely, but I've had bad experiences in the past with Netgear. Their firmware has been buggy and their support hasn't been interested in resolving issues. That's not good. He says, I'm looking at the Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro. He says, I already have a 24-port switch and their rack-mounted stuff, so this would fit nicely. And I have some of their Wi-Fi 6 access points, or could get some of them. He says, would there be any downsides to this system compared to my existing Synology or compared to the best mesh systems you have had? Like I said before, I happily recommend Eero and Plume, partially because of their cloud management. I really think, I know that there's some hesitation with cloud management, and I understand why. I totally get it. But I think that cloud management is a big part of why we don't have to overthink and overmanage our own mesh networks and still get the benefits of that, machine learning, which I know they're doing, especially over at Plume. And so I'm bullish on cloud management for mesh Wi-Fi for exactly these reasons. I understand why you might not want to have cloud managed network. Totally get it. And if that's the case, then going with a Ubiquiti would be a great system for you. Yeah. But the Netgear Orbi is also not cloud managed. He said he had some troubles with Orbi in the past. I have 2. Their Wi-Fi 6, their Orbi 6 stuff has been phenomenal for me. So I share that because, everybody deserves a second chance when they put the work in. And I believe Netgear is on that list right now. So anyway, it's worth considering. If you had come to me and just said, hey, Dave, I don't want cloud managed mesh Wi-Fi. I want locally managed. What would you recommend? I would have said the Netgear Orbi 6 or like the TP-Link Deco. So those would be my 2. So there you go. That's what I got. Anything on that, John, before we have one more Wi-Fi question before we move on to regular questions? I think you're muted, John. I can see you talking, but I can't hear you speaking. So
Nope. There we go.
Okay.
I was muted.
Yes. All right. Good. That's better than it just being a technical issue. I mean, it's a technical issue. It's just a, error between the chair and the keyboard, if you don't mind me saying so.
Operator error.
Operator error. Yeah, there you go.
That's what we used to call it.
Yep. All right. One last one from listener Robin, who asks, I'll be shortly moving houses and have a combination of the Eero or the RT2600 AC plus a couple of Airport Extremes connected via Ethernet to get my signal boosted in different areas, and I'm considering taking the opportunity to move to mesh. I was wondering about replacing my RT2600 AC to get Wi-Fi 6 mesh, which I want for backhaul speeds, but it sounds like I could just augment my Synology router with the Eero Pro system just running the Wi-Fi. How difficult is that to set up? Well, the good news is, Robin, it's super easy, and that is currently exactly what I'm running here at the house. The Synology is the main router. Its Wi-Fi is turned off, so I've gone into the Synology and disabled the radios. So it is truly just acting as a router, and then I have the Eero, and I've gone in and disabled its router, and you do that by going into the network settings of the Eero and put it in bridge mode. This turns off the routing functionality and some other features that require routing, and then brings you just mesh with the Eero. And it's a great setup. I mean, it's very decadent, but it's fantastic. So because you get the router you want and you get the mesh that you want, and everybody's happy. So there you go. Any thoughts on that, John, before we move on to our regular questions, or non-Wi-Fi questions, I should say?
No, that's, good dose of Wi-Fi there.
Mm-hmm. All right, sweet. You want to take us to listener John?
Listener John has a weird one. And listener John says, I recently noticed that the hard drive, a 3 terabyte Fusion drive on my late 2015 27-inch iMac running 11.1 was more full than it should be. I noticed this before the update to Big Sur. When I ran Daisy Disk as administrator, I found something odd. The top level of the hard drive had the usual 4 folders: applications, library, system, and users. But it also had a folder, not visible in the Finder, called Volumes. And in that is another folder called iMac-Data. And in that are the same 4 folders that exist at the top level of the drive: application, library, system, and users. The mystery Volumes takes up about 1 terabyte versus 1.5 terabyte for the rest of the drive. So what is this Volumes folder? I've been unable to find anything that describes what it is. I found references to system volumes. Yeah, that's normal. And other volumes under hidden space in Daisy Disk, but no reference to volumes at the top level of the drive. That fills up all this space. I'm starting to wonder if this is the result of some sort of drive corruption. And does it take up real space? And how do I get rid of it or make it take less space? Normally, you shouldn't see /volumes, though it is there, Dave, if you go in the terminal. But what that is I'll call it a mount point, right, for other volumes. And that, so for example, if you go to my system, and you go to, CD in the terminal, CD space /volumes, and then do an ls-l, what you will see is, the first thing is data_archive, which is my Drobo, and it's listed as a directory. Google Drive, which I also use Google Drive, and it's listed as a directory. Macintosh SSD, which is, I think, a symbolic link. It has an L next to it. And then recovery, which is your recovery partition. And you'll see the same things in locations and your machine name in the location sidebar. But I ran Daisy Disk just to see if this was a bug in Daisy Disk, and I didn't see any huge volumes folder. So, I would say yes, there is something in this, and you should, and I would think do what he suggested, which is,
yeah.
Well, his thought was, I should do a clone and then, bring all the data back to that one.
Yeah, I'm more wondering about your machine and why the recovery partition is is mounted. I don't. Oh, that's a Big Sur machine, correct?
Correct.
That's normal then. Sorry. On Catalina, no recovery. Big Sur, recovery. It's hidden. You don't get to see it. It doesn't show up, but it is mounted. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
So that was definitely bad.
Yeah.
It was a volumes folder, not the the kind of mysterious hidden volumes thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. That's weird. Yeah, it's, but you're right. It's a mount point. The way Unix mounts another drive or another volume is it creates a folder and then says mount that drive at this folder. And so the contents of that folder are like, the folder will exist on your boot drive. Like, for you, there is a folder on your boot drive called volumes recovery, but it's empty. And Unix is just pointing at that and saying, this is where we're going to attach off this other volume. So there you go. Yeah. Cool. All right. You want to take us to Phil, John?
Phil. Yes. All right. Oh, no. I don't have...
it's there.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. All right. Good. No, Phil? I have a geek challenge I can share. Should I share the geek challenge while you find Phil? Okay, you found Phil. Let's go.
Yes. All right. Using a MacBook Air for everything, especially my podcast and radio shows. It's 128 gigabyte hard drive, and it struggles. So everything is on the external hard drive plugged into the MacBook Air via a hub. iTunes library, photos, podcast audio, all that stuff. The external hard drive is now struggling, so I downloaded Defrag and saw lots of gaps in the hard drive. So guessed the Defrag would help. I don't have another external hard drive to move data from one to another and format, so ideally I need to defrag this drive. I tried with Defrag, but it cannot unmount the drive. Some processes are using it, mainly photos, which I tried in Kill and Activity Monitor, but they always come back. So how can I defrag my external drive? I cannot work out a way to unmount it. All right, and then I went down an interesting path, Dave. So you could decouple the photo library and the external drive and temporarily point it towards your internal SSD, just so the process, which is usually photo analysis D and photo library D, won't be grabbing the external drive and causing this. But I suspect there are other processes that are maybe doing the same thing. So you may never be able to figure them all out. But that would be one place to start.
Yeah, that works.
Then what Go ahead. Here's what I would do. Something jumped out at me that he said. One thing that I would do, Dave, is maybe download an installer and install it on an external drive and boot from that, and then run Defrag.
Well, then you're definitely not going to be able to unmount the drive, right? If you've for a different installer, a different external, not that external. Yeah,
correct.
That's another way.
My thought would be create a bootable something. And then point it at that drive.
Sure.
Because the bootable something that you create will not have any links to that other external drive.
Yep. So
that was another one.
Rob in the chat room says attach shut down your main machine and attach this external to another. So that's yet another way of getting this drive unfettered access unmounted. The way I would do it is... Well, there's two ways. You sort of stumbled on one with the external drive. You don't have to, as I've proven, you don't have to have another drive to have another bootable volume. So you could just create a bootable volume on your internal drive if you have the space, right? And just boot from that. But I think there's an easier way, because all of the things that are pointing at this are user services, photos, podcasts, those kinds of things. And photos, even when you quit the Photos app, it's still doing it in the background if you've got an iCloud library, maybe even if you don't. So I think what I would try is create a second user account. Log completely out. Don't do fast user switching. Log completely out of your main user account. Log into this test user account. And I think you're going to be able to unmount that drive and defrag the living daylights out of it. That's what I would try. So I don't know.
Yes. And I think, and I think we got a response saying, hey, yeah, that would be a good idea too. The only other thing I would think, Dave, is that money may be tight in this case, but I would take a external rotational drive. And I would, actually, my suggestion was two reasons. One, SSDs are pretty inexpensive these days. So getting a large external SSD and cloning the contents from that would be one thing that I think would give you much, much better performance.
Yeah.
I agree. And then the other thing, he said he doesn't have an additional external drive. And so that led me down the path of, I hope you're making a backup. And he replied that, yes, he is, in fact, doing a time machine backup. So I misinterpreted what he wrote there.
No, that's okay. No, it's good. It's good. It's good. Cool. Yeah, I like these kinds of questions. It's good. I have a geek challenge for us, John, and that is listener Mark writes in. He says, at work, my Mac and my working partner's Mac are in different rooms about 20 feet away. We yell to each other to have conversations. I know it would be better to just use the old-fashioned wired wireless intercom so we do not have to yell, but being a geek, I would rather have it work just between the two Macs. It looks like there used to be an app called Desktop Intercom, but it's been discontinued. Any other ideas? He says, we're both Italian, so we call it using the Italian intercom when we yell room to room. Yes, my wife is half Sicilian, so I'm very well-versed in this concept. I like your question, though, but I don't have an answer, which is why I have made this geek challenge. We use the Amazon A-Lady for this in our house, either by saying, A-Lady, drop in on kitchen, and now you've got an intercom connection between the two, or if you truly just need like a one-way thing, you can say, A-Lady, announce, and then it announces whatever you want, like, announce time for dinner, and now throughout the house echoes time for dinner. So, but I don't know, or we use our Apple Watches walkie-talkie feature, right? That's right there if you happen to have Apple Watches. But as for Mac to Mac, I don't know of any intercoms, like easy to use intercoms off the top of my head. I mean, you could FaceTime call each other and that right? I mean, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually in doing a remote support for my parents.
Yeah.
I was having issues with trying to connect with it'll come to me at some point.
Yeah.
But the support software I had that would, let me control the computer wasn't working, and I don't think iChat was set up right, or messages. You can use that, but I was like, hey, take Dad's I called my dad's iPad, and then I'm like, show me, aim it at the computer so I can see your desktop. So kind of a hokey way of getting remote access, but it worked.
I'll tell you, the thing I'm using for remote access, especially tech support these days, going back to Zoom, it's excellent. You can have dual control of the screens. Everybody's already got Zoom on their computers nowadays anyway. So it really, it's been, Team Viewer is out the window for me. It's Zoom all day long for any remote support. It's really, really well done. So, all right. John, we have time for one more if we make it a quick one. So you want to do Ari or is there another one on the list? But we have to decide.
Yeah.
All right, go.
No, we'll do Ari.
Take Ari. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So let me go to Ari. Eventually figured this one out, but this was an odd one. So, hi guys, have you found out this to be a case after you allowed for external booting on your T2 machine? And I happen to have one of those, Dave.
Yeah.
Or I have a couple of them, actually. Actually, mine are both T2 machines, as far as I know.
That's right.
And he shows a screenshot of Wallet and Apple Pay. And he highlights a card, and it says, card is unavailable to use with Apple Pay. Apple Pay has been disabled because the security settings of this Mac were modified. Learn more. And then there's a article, which I think we should probably link to, from Apple. And it gives you a few suggestions. And so I tried to reproduce this problem. So I have and he says, he thought maybe it was a CCC warning, or an issue related to Carbon Copy Cloner, but that's what I use to make my clone. And so I tried to boot from my clone, and I had something a little different happen. In that when I tried, it didn't come up with this message. Now I was set to media, and I was also set to medium security, which is funny because their article kind of suggests that it won't work. What happened in my case, Dave, was my cards were still in Apple Pay, but I had to re-enter the CCV of each one.
Okay.
In order for Apple Pay to then be active on the clone. So that's one thing. But he changed to medium security. I thought that would fix it. It didn't for him.
Huh.
And then he came back. So this thread has been going back and forth with us for a while. But I was like, man, what else can I suggest? And then I noticed the screen, Dave, has the cards listed and a plus and a minus sign. And I'm like, well, why don't you delete the cards and put them back in? And he did.
And that solved it.
What fixed it.
Ah,
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, the T2 chip is involved in more than we think it is. I've come to realize that, and that's okay. Like, but it seems like it was probably holding on to something there, and by taking the card out and putting it back into macOS, the T2 chip gets happier about things again. So yeah. Well, that's good, man. Nice fix. Yeah.
But also, I've noticed on multiple devices that sometimes if Apple Pay thinks that somebody's trying to pull a fast one,
yeah,
it's going to do something like this.
Yeah.
Or in the fact, like on a new device, like,
right.
When I got my new phone, it was like, yeah, you got to type in you're on a different device, even though I know about your cards, you're on another device. So you got to, reauthorize. So this is not unusual behavior for Apple Pay.
Right.
Though I've never seen the message that he got.
Right. Yeah. No, it makes sense, man. It makes sense. I like it. It's good. The T2, it's a good thing what Apple's doing with the T2 chip. We just, as troubleshooters, we need to learn what it's done. So that's all we got for this week, folks. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks to everybody in the chat room at live.macgeekgab.com. Thanks to all of our premium contributors. I will list all of your names next week, I promise. Thanks to all of our sponsors, of course. You can see all our sponsors at macgeekgab.com/sponsors, but of course, Twobird.com, Babbel.com with promo code MGG, Amazon.com/MGGRX, KittyPooClub.com, promo code MGG. Thanks for hanging out with us. John, if someone wants to email us, it's feedback@macgeekgab.com, right?
I'm pretty sure it's feedback@macgeekgab.com.
Get that wrong every time. It's feedback@macgeekgab.com. Thanks so much, folks. Thanks for sending in all your questions and your tips and your cool stuff found. Really makes it, it's what makes the show happen. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next week. It's time to go. Visit our podcast marketplace. You can see that at macgeekgab.com/sponsors with other sponsors like smilesoftware.com/podcast, maxsales.com, airbones.com, yeseero.com/MGG, linode.com/MGG. Lots of good company. John, help us. Pull the ripcord. What is it we need to say?
What we need to say to all of you is 3 simple words, and they are: don't get caught.
Made on a Mac.
And we're out. Sweet. Cool. I'm going to make it to my theater show and have the show prepped. This is excellent. Cool. Fun stuff. Technology behaved. It's good. Good morning.
So did you notice? Yeah, maybe we'll get to that hard drive reliability thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I wanted to put that with the SSD stuff that we also had. So I figured those were good together.
Yes.
Yeah. And then why is Synology making hard drives?
But then what? Are they using somebody else's chips? I don't know.
Yeah, Toshiba is the answer there. They're using Toshiba's drives. It's not even, they're not making their own drives. Okay. They're just, built to spec essentially for their enterprise NASs. Is what it is. So
there was one of the stats here that was really bad for some of the,
yeah, I noticed. I mean, they only had used
drives.
50 of them and they had 2 fail. But that's
okay. Yeah.
Right. I saw that number and it was like, well, that's not really that's not enough drive. That's not enough of a sample size to mean anything.
Right. I thought there was another one with some really terrible numbers. Yes. Oh, no. Okay. All right. I see what that number is.
Right.
Confidence level. Okay.
Yeah. It's
No, there's still another one. One of the Seagates. Yeah. Okay. You're right.
Right. It was like 50 drives or something that